Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this session of the Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee. We have two items on our agenda this morning. We will start with the spending affordability guidelines for the FY27 operating budget. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Smith in a moment. You will note on top of page 2 the areas in which we adopt the spending affordability guidelines for the operating budget. We've spent a lot of time talking about the CIP SAG, and now we're going to switch gears for the operating budget, and I'll let Mr. Smith walk through the packet.
Thank you, Chair Stewart, and good morning to the GO Committee. I also want to acknowledge my partners and colleagues from Department of Finance and OMB here. They're here for questions today because we work collaboratively throughout the year on revenue estimates, which are included in this packet, as well as expenditure estimates for fiscal 27 in the December update. So as the Chair mentioned, we're going through the companion program for the operating budget today for the spending affordability guidelines. There's 3 decision points before the committee that I'll get to momentarily. But first, I wanted to get to some of the economic background, which is part of this process, and go through that. For those reading later or watching at home, pages 2 through 4 give most of this information. But the county code does require that the council consider, among other relevant factors, the condition of the economy, the level of economic activity in the county, trends in personal income, and the impact of economic and population growth on projected revenues. And so there's no specific metrics like we use for the capital budget, and so council staff usually prepares this packet in January for the consideration of the public hearing. So the most important thing, and we were just talking about this, the data is always delayed for our economy, and even with the partial government shutdown, we know some of the BLS data has been delayed, and so the data we have here is what was good back when the report was written in January, but we know the economy is ever shifting, and so just want to note that up front. So some of the high-level takeaways from what we had in January, we know year over year the employment rate has increased in the county, as well as just the region generally. It's a modest increase, but it's more than it was in 2024. 2025 saw an increase in unemployment. Likewise, payroll jobs have decreased both in the region and the county. So there are fewer jobs, and most importantly for the county, not included yet because we don't have the data from BLS, but we know that over 10,000 jobs were lost in Maryland for federal jobs from September of 2025 to October 2025. And so that is noted in this packet, but we still haven't seen how that's going to play out in terms of the economy for the county. Inflation has slightly decreased year over year from 24 to 25, but it continues to be higher than the 2% kind of target rate for the Fed Reserve, as well as continues to kind of be a moving target. Is it going to go up next month? Is it going to go down next month? And so although we've seen some improvement, inflation continues to be a concern for many. Office market continues to be pretty high vacancies. It has remained unchanged from 2024 and 2025, and rents are about the same. And so at least on the commercial side, it's unchanged, but much higher in terms of vacancy rate than what the county would like to see. And then finally, home sales and prices as estimated by finance were down for 2025. They both decreased. And so all of that is kind of the milieu of what is out there for our residents, out there for the county. And again, as we're going to talk about momentarily, this process, similar to the capital side, is setting the affordability guidelines for what the council believes is affordable for county residents, for the county as we go into the operating budget. Again, not based on need or what we understand the need will be, but what we think is affordable based on the economy and economic conditions. And so with that, I'll go ahead and jump into the 3 decision points for the committee. If it's okay with the chair, I'll introduce each one, stop, and see if the committee agrees, disagrees with council staff, and then we'll move on to each one. So the first one is the law requires the committee and the council to set the ceiling for the ad valorem tax rate. And due to other charter amendments that have occurred, this one has become a little less important, because if whatever you set here becomes a threshold, a supermajority threshold for the final vote, but ultimately the charter requires 11 votes to exceed the charter limit anyway. And so as we've done every year, the council staff has recommended the ceiling for ad valorem real property tax rates at the charter limit, which is the same rate that was assumed in the December update.
Not seeing any comments on that. And Ms. Feldman and Mr. Mullen, anytime you want to jump, if you have differing opinions and want to jump in, just let me know. But that's probably the easiest decision we'll make today.
I agree. Okay, perfect. So the next one is the ceiling on the aggregate operating budget. This one I think will take a little more time. It's also probably the biggest decision before the committee today. And so this is taking the aggregate operating budget is defined in county code in terms of all that goes into that. Last year, the council approved an aggregated operating budget of close to $6.6 billion. And so each year, council staff looks at different ways to calculate that based on, again, what's affordable. The table 1 on page 5 shows the different rates that have been used to calculate the aggregate operating budget for the spend and affordability guidelines. Again, there's no specific process that is there. It's somewhat of an art and science. The most important thing to just define here is the total that the council approves in February for the ceiling of the aggregate operating budget becomes the supermajority threshold for the council in May, meaning that you will require 8 votes. Also, regardless of what the council sets, if the total aggregate operating budget is less than inflation, that will require 7 votes during the May approval of the budget. And like we've talked about for the capital budget, this gives you guys gives a marker, a demarcation. But again, the council, and through its deliberative process for the budget, will set an aggregate operating budget based on need and affordability. But again, whatever is set today will be, on Tuesday, and whatever the committee recommends today will be the ceiling for the 8 vote threshold. On Circle 6, there are 3 calculations for getting there. One is holding it, option 1 is not increasing at all, so holding it exactly the same as fiscal 26. Option 2 is increasing by inflation, which is 2.44% is the estimate this year. And then option 3 is increasing by the rate of personal income growth, or total personal income growth in the county, which is 1.09%. We'll get to the different allocations in momentarily, but council staff, based on all of the economic conditions I just said, is recommending option 3, which is 1.09% increase, the total personal income growth that is estimated for the county. And in that case, it would give a total or ceiling on aggregate operating budget of $6,728.1 million, or about $6.7 billion. So I'll pause there if there's questions, comments, but or alternatives that the committee wants to consider.
Okay. Anyone have any questions on that one, or
No, I'm good.
any comments? Ms. Feldman, Mr. Mullen? Nope, that's good. No, I appreciate it, and I think, Mr. Smith, that you said this is a little different than when we do the CIP. There's more of an art than a science, and I appreciate the staff's recommendation looking at option number 3, the increase in the average personal income. We have in the past, last year we did the inflation, but I think as we actually had conversations during the budget last year when we were thinking about what people's personal income is and what you've outlined here, it makes a lot of sense that we look at what is affordable for our residents. So I think with that, we'll accept it.
Very good. And then the last decision point or points for the committee this morning is the allocation of that aggregate operating budget now that amongst various parts of county government and county government budgets as defined in county code. I think for both the council members and those watching home, the easiest way for me to do this is to look on page 1 of the memo where it's in a table. This is the same table that's in the resolution. I will go through each of these. I'll do them all, and if there's no disagreement, we can do them all, or we can pause and we can talk about each one. Again, on Circle 6, the calculations are done. Many of these, such as debt service, current revenue, those are all come from the December 25 fiscal plan update. For the agencies, I'll just note 2 things. First, both schools, or MCPS and Montgomery College, are based on MOE that we currently estimate for fiscal 27, and then whatever remains left from the total is then put in percentage-wise both to Park and Planning and County Government based on the fiscal 26 approved. Unlike the ceiling on the aggregate operating budget, there is no vote threshold for these. These are simply just kind of again a demarcation of kind of where the money should go or could go, but it doesn't restrict the council as it considers need during the budget. There is, however, in law a requirement for agencies that exceed whatever is recommended here to send a letter of what would need to be the recommended cuts in order to meet that limit if they exceeded from the March 15th budget from the county executive. And as always, the resolution does say that if for our outside agencies, if any of that increase is due to state aid, they don't need to send us a letter. So with that, I'll quickly go through each of the ones that the committee needs to consider and recommend to the council. And if in total they all make sense, we can improve it kind of in blocks. So the first one is debt service. The recommendation is $471.5 million. This includes the county government's general obligation bond debt, as well as other long-term lease debt, as well as park and planning debt. The next one is current revenue for specific projects. The estimate for fiscal 27 from the December fiscal plan update is $134.2 million. Current revenue for PAYGO, again, which was assumed in the revenue update in 2025, but not a part of the county executive's recommended CIP, was $29 million for PAYGO. Retiree health insurance pre-funding is estimated at $60.7 million. And then for the 4 agencies, again, MCPS is recommended at $3,352.8 million, which is MOE for fiscal 27. It's slightly less than what we did in fiscal 26 due to the estimated decrease in enrollment for students. Montgomery College is also at $216.3 million. This is also less than fiscal 26, primarily because fiscal 26 included rollover balance that is not included in this calculation. And then the last two are county government and park and planning, which again are distributed by their proportional from fiscal 26. And so county government is $2,281.9 million, and park and planning is $181.9 million. And then you get your total of the $6,728.1 million ceiling you all just approved. So questions about those specific ones, happy to answer. If not, that also the council or committee is welcome to approve them all in block.
Good. No questions.
Very good. Well, we thank you for your time. I know there's another item up that many are here to listen to and partake in. So I will prepare the packet, and this will be the recommendation for the council on Tuesday, February 10th, which is the date the council must approve this.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Thank you, Ms. Feldman. Thank you, Mr. Mellon, for your time. Appreciate it. We will now move on. Let's see. Oh, there's Ms. Wellens. Okay. I'm used to you sitting over here. All right, we will now move on to our second item, which is Bill 28-24, Employees Retirement System and Other Post-Employment Benefits, Administration Powers and Duties. Thank you all. Before we begin, I just wanted to kind of set the stage a little bit on this and first say thank you. This has had many people giving input and thoughts on not just this bill, but how we look at the governance of our Board of Investment Trustees. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who has provided that input. I also wanted to give a little background because it's not always usual that we have a bill introduced and we take it up a full year later. And so what happened? As has been noted, this bill was first introduced in December of 2024. It was introduced by our full committee, the Government Operations and Fiscal Policy. At that time, Councilmember Friedson was on the committee and was leading on this matter, and we're glad to have Councilmember Evans now with us on the committee. The bill, as introduced, makes 2 changes, moving from the CAO to the Board of Investment Trustees, 2 items, selecting and retaining an actuary for the retirement system and determining assumptions to be used in actuarial and other computations for the system. At the time when it was introduced in December, I think my colleague to my right here will agree, and I wouldn't say we had consensus, but it wasn't necessarily a bill that there was a lot of disagreement on. As most of the stakeholders and many people generally support it. However, unfortunately, on our Board of Investment Trustees, there has been, and unfortunately at times fairly public, disagreement with members, some disagreement with the former executive director, the CAO, and others. Because of some issues that came up last year when I assumed the council presidency, we made the decision to hold off on the public hearing and this committee's discussion of the bill. We were asked by some of the stakeholders to do our due diligence and look at how the other bodies like this are governed. And so we put a request in to our Office of Legislative Oversight to do a report. And Mr. Trumka is here, and I want to thank him for that report. And I think that was very important to do at that time. I know there were some folks who wanted us to move forward, and I very much appreciate their patience as we did that report. So we received the OLO report in the fall, in November. It is a very thorough report. We wanted to make sure that everyone had time to review it. And so we held our first session reviewing that report in January, so people had time to review and provide comments on it. Since we had the report and we still had this bill, we requested from the council president to hold a public hearing, which she did, and now we are here at our committee session to go through the bill. In preparing the packet, I first want to say thank you to Ms. Wellens for preparing the packet. The committee did ask her to draft amendments that were reflective of recommendations from the OLO report so that we would have the opportunity to discuss those today, because none of us, and particularly our attorney, like when we try to write amendments from the dais. So we thought, let's do that ahead of time and put it in the packet, so that would also provide people the opportunity to review them before we got here today. I do want to say at the outset, because this has been a process, how each of us here deeply respect the individuals involved in this conversation. Everyone brings expertise, knowledge, and I think most importantly, dedication to the retirees in this county. And I know we may not all agree on all the points today. There's a fair amount of agreement, but we may not agree on all the decisions that we'll make today. That I hope once we are done with this bill and move forward, we will all remember the dedication we have to our retirees in the county and work together on those issues. So I just want to say again, thank you to everyone who is here. It's a bit longer of an introduction than I usually do, but wanted to kind of set the stage. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Wellens. We also have a number of people who are here with us today. I think Mr. Madalino, our CAO, is here. Our Director of Finance, in his role as the Director of Finance, Mr. Covey, is here. Mr. Crow, thank you for being here and for stepping into the role as the Acting Executive Director for the Montgomery County Employment Retirement Plans. We know sometimes being an active executive director can be a difficult position to be in, and we very much appreciate the work you're doing. And we have Mr. Trumpka from OLO to answer questions on the report if we have that. Ms. Wellens, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you, council members, and good morning. A couple of points about the packet. As the chair mentioned, subsequent to the OLO report, the chair did invite the trustees to provide comments on the OLO report. Those were provided, and those are available in the packet, along with some MOUs that were entered into, I believe, last month, between the CAO and our HBT, Consolidated Retiree Health Board of Trustees, as well as the Board of Investment Trustees for the ERS. And those are also included in your packet. And then in addition, this past Thursday afternoon, after the packet was due, I received the fiscal impact statement. So that is included as an addendum to your packet. So those are some nuts and bolts. Just wanted to kind of, and apologies if this is repetitive, but just kind of reiterate within the code what we're talking about here. And that includes, with respect to the Board of Investment Trustees for the retirement system, there are a couple of provisions of the code in particular that we're looking at, and including sections 3347, which articulate the CAOs, the Chief Administrative Officer's duties with respect to the retirement system, and then also, excuse me, sorry, and then section 3360, the Board of Investment of Trustees, powers and duties. The 3360 sets up the general premise that, except as provided in section 3347 and a couple of other exceptions that aren't relevant here, the powers and duties with respect to the administration and the investments of the retirement system are hereby vested in the Board of Investment Trustees. Then we flip to 3347 to look at those exceptions. 3347 states the general premise that the chief administrative officer shall be responsible for the administration of the retirement system. And then in subsection D, it goes on to delineate some of those specific duties, including, for example, interpreting the provisions of the retirement system, deciding eligibility, computing amounts of benefits, authorizing disbursements, keeping records. And as the chair mentioned, the important points for today, the selection and retention of the actuary for the retirement system, as well as, after consultation with the board and the actuary for the retirement system, determining the actuarial cost method and the mortality, turnover, interest rates, and other assumptions to be used in actuarial and other computations for the retirement system. And those last two, the selection and the setting the assumptions, are, as the chair said, the duties that under this bill as introduced would be shifted from the CAO to the Board of Investment Trustees. So that's kind of where we are. Then there, as the chair said, there was the OLO report, which had a number of recommendations which are relevant to the bill. And at the committee members' request, I did draft some potential amendments related to some of those recommendations, which I'm happy to talk through, but wanted to just kind of pause there. That's the basic framework for today. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Before we get into the amendments, I just want to see if my colleagues have any questions on the bill as was introduced. Anything? Councilmember Evans, anything at this time? Oh, did you say you did?
I did.
Okay, no, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I'm good.
No, he's good. Did you have any questions or comments on just the bill before we get into the amendments?
No.
Okay. All right. Then let's look at the amendments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Turning to page 5 of the staff memorandum, and the amendments are also included starting at circle 50 of your packet, but they're also restated in the memo itself, so you don't need to flip back and forth. The first potential amendment relates to recommendation in the OLO report, which was recommendation A, that the council amend section 3360 of the code to clarify that the BIT's responsibilities include trust fund asset management and investment, but do not include any other retirement system administrative functions. As you know, the term administration is subject to interpretation. The delineation between management and administration is not necessarily always a fine line. What this amendment does in order to address the recommendation is to try to really home in on the actual functions. And so it would set up a default rule under the relevant provisions of the code that, except as otherwise provided, the CAO would have the authority to manage and administer eligibility, mandatory reporting, calculation and distribution of benefits, and then under 3360, it would set up the general rule that is, except as otherwise provided, that the BIT would have authority to manage and administer the investments of the assets of the retirement system. So it would try to draw a general line in between the different functions of managing the system. So that's for discussion. Thanks.
I think on Amendment 1, I believe we had received comments, and I think this is an area there's general agreement. So any questions on
the area?
So I think we will accept that amendment.
Excuse me. Thank you, Madam Chair. Then issue number 2, this is on page 6. Recommendation B in the OLO report was to amend 33159 of the code. This deals with the CRHBT to enumerate the specific responsibilities of the CAO in administering the CRHBT. And this, basically the original bill didn't address this, and but it certainly makes a lot of sense to bring greater clarity to the administration and management of the CRHBT in kind of a parallel manner, as is done for the BIT. So the amendments here, that would be the aim of doing that. It would indicate that, well, first of all, it would indicate that the Board of Trustees would select the actuary for both entities, or they're not entities, but for both boards. And then for the Retiree Health Benefit Trust and the BIT for the two trusts, and then also set the actuarial assumptions. And then in addition, it would indicate that except as otherwise provided, the board of the CRHBT would have the authority to manage and administer the investments of the trust fund's assets, whereas except as otherwise provided, the CAO would have the authority to manage and administer eligibility, financial reporting and calculation, and distribution of benefits.
No, we accept that amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And the last potential amendment identified for you, we're on page 7 of the staff memorandum, and this relates to the hiring and supervision of the executive director of the retirement system. And under the OLO report, one of the recommendations was to set forth a process where the CAO would oversee the recruitment process, vet applications, and provide a short list of qualified candidates to the BIT for the executive director position. And and then ultimately the BIT would decide who to hire. So this amendment is an attempt to carry out that recommendation, and also to it's kind of tweaked in a manner to try to account for the system envisioned by the current MOUs, in which there would be involvement in the hiring process by the chair of the Board of Trustees or the chair's designee and the chair of the CRHBT or that chair's designee. This would be, this would require a lot of coordination, obviously. I mean, there has to be a lot of coordination under the current system. There would have to be a lot of coordination in a new way about the executive director, because this person would be a merit system employee. We have a couple of other boards in the county that do this, the Merit System Protection Board and the Ethics Commission, where they hire a merit system staff. But obviously there would have to be coordination with the CAO and, perhaps some delegation to the CAO in terms of day-to-day. So those are all my comments. Thanks.
Great. I think this one may have more discussion on than the other two. I know, Councilmember Katz, did you have questions regarding this? Not at this moment. Okay. Councilmember Evans, any questions on this one? All right. You want to come back?
Yeah.
All right. Councilmember Katz.
Thank you. I do think we need some clarification on this one. This one, what does supervise mean, and who's supervising? And if the board, and I don't, you mentioned the other boards that they hire, how often do they meet, and how often, and how is that system working? How does that, if you have, this board I think meets four times a year, and how can you supervise on a day-to-day activity for a board that's meeting 4 times a year? I'm not saying it can't be done, but I think we have to figure out how it can be done, or should it be done this way?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Councilmember Katz, I can speak. Great question.
I'm glad she's the chair.
Yes.
Believe me. Yes.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I think it's a great question, and others may be able to answer it more completely than I can, to be frank. But I think that it would likely play out in the form of there would be an MOU, as there already is. There would be an updated MOU, I believe, between the CAO and the board regarding how that would work. My understanding for the other boards is some of the day-to-day, approving time cards, that type of thing, completing evaluations through our system, is done through other employees. So for example, for the Merit System Protection Board, the executive director for the council is the one who gets to approve time cards and carry out those types of day-to-day functions for that position. For the Ethics Commission, I believe it's the executive branch has like a similar role, although I'm not as familiar with that one. But I think it would require some collaboration and standard operating procedures of how to accomplish that. And then I would also just note that, if the board is taking on this additional responsibility, just keep in mind, they might need to meet more than 4 times a year, which they certainly could do. But yeah, it would be certainly an important additional responsibility they'd be taking on. Thank you.
And just for the updated MOU or whatever, am I correct that it has not been ratified by the board? Has been updated? It has been ratified. You're shaking your head, yes. Like on Judge Judy, you gotta answer. You just can't change.
The MOU that is in the packet.
It is signed. It is signed and in the packet.
It is, but it's been ratified.
MOUs with both boards have been signed and approved.
I saw it, but I didn't know if it had been ratified. Okay. But it hasn't had a chance to actually be worked on yet, right? Is that correct? It's fairly new. Yeah. Okay.
Well, it was finally signed
in December.
One of the problems with the meeting 4 times a year to get it approved by the board, it took some time.
And if we can clarify the meeting 4 times a year, it's my understanding, or I've been told, that you used to meet more often than that. Is that correct?
Mr. Carvey, do you want to? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mike Covey, Director of Finance. Yes, Mr. Katz, that's absolutely true. Used to be 6 times a year, and other pension systems meet much more frequently than that. And you're right to focus on the fact that 4 days a year, it's not just 4 times. 4 times could be 4 weeks a year. It's 4 days a year that the board meets, and it used to be 6 days a year that the board meets. It's my personal opinion, it's impossible to manage somebody when you meet with them 4 times a year, 6 times a year, 8 times a year, even a dozen times a year. So.
And why did you go from 6 to 4?
The board voted on that a few years ago, and the thought at the time, whether it was accurate or not, was that the board could do the work that it needed to do, which is only on the investment side, of course, in only 4 days a year. Honestly, we found it, because I also note, I'm on the boards as well.
And how long have you been on the board, just for the?
Yeah, so I have found that it's difficult to work in do all the work that we need to do in just 4 days a year. And, and hopefully the board will discuss actually increasing the number of days a year that it meets possibly at tomorrow's meeting. But you could also amend the law to actually require the board to meet more than 4 times a year.
Well, right now we have enough to chew on. I don't know.
Yeah.
Can I ask Mr. Trumpka? Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
Because this was one of the recommendations from the OLO report to review this recommendation, and in his research, what he found.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. So several things to cover. First, to support the comment of Ms. Wellens that no matter how this comes out, this is going to require a lot of coordination. Second important point, commend the CAO for recently restructuring the MCERP, the Montgomery County Employees Retirement Plans, where previously many of the functions that was under that plan dealt more with the retirement system rather than serving the Board of Investment Trustees and the CRHPT. With this restructuring, the sole purpose, the sole function, the sole duties and responsibilities of the staff of the MCRP is to serve the investment functions of the 2 trust funds, and the executive director, he or she would be the person who oversees that function. In terms of the interaction between the executive director, the ERP staff, the CAO, and the Board of Trustees, we did not comment on the number of times the board meets. But the clear sense from the legislation and the code as it exists today that Ms. Wellens went through is that the boards are the ones that set the policy, the direction for investment of those trust fund dollars. And so, in essence, they are supervising the very direction that this MCRP is charged to do, and now exclusively charged to do. That has been their prior function. It will remain their function no matter how this comes out. And so, to me, it made sense, having looked at other jurisdictions. Now, I need to say, both with the number of meetings and other things, not all boards of trustees look the same. Many boards of trustees meet much more frequently, in my research, I found, but they also have broader responsibilities, much more related to the administration of the retirement system itself. Those duties that are assigned to the CAO, as Ms. Wellens spelled out in the code, many of those in other jurisdictions are assigned to the Board of Investment Trustees. Within the context, though, of how it works here in Montgomery County, the board has the responsibility to direct the strategy for the investments. And so it seemed to me appropriate that include the oversight and supervision within the merit system rules of the charge of the executive director. That seemed to me a clear alignment with what the code says and a clear alignment with the very advisable restructuring that the CAO implemented in the past few months. Concluding, that being said, it will take a lot of coordination, as Ms. Wellens said.
Thank you, Mr. Trumka.
May I answer Mr. Katz's question?
Sure. I thought we had answered it, but go ahead.
Yeah.
Ms. Brown.
Well, no, I went it. So prior to my service as the CAO, and again, my name is Rich Medellino. I'm the Chief Administrative Officer for the county government. Prior to my service as the CAO, I had the opportunity to be the budget director for the county. As such, I was one of the designated people on the Board of Investment Trustees. And to me, one of the reasons why the board went to fewer meetings is the board made the policy decision to vest more responsibility in the chief investment officer. We used to go through in the meetings and actually approve the investments, meet the actual fund directors we were investing in. And the decision was made to delegate that authority to the chief investment officer, so that the meetings just were much shorter, because we used to have these more lengthy presentations, which meant more meetings. So depending upon how a future board decides what level of delegation they want to provide to a chief investment officer, they would need to either have more meetings or stick to the current set of meetings. I would point out, the Inspector General did remind us, as a result of these amendments that came out, that prior chief investment officers, executive directors were dismissed for actual misuse of funds. And part of what the IG then recommended to the CAO was the need for more supervision, because it was the lax supervision of just having a volunteer board supervising them that left an exposure to someone misusing the authorities that they were given. So just as an aside, it's interesting from the past that was seen as a deficiency, and why more responsibility for the day-to-day supervision was given to the CAO, and an encouragement to take a more active role in supervising the staff, so that they were not violating county procedures. And as I think you've all been talking about, obviously, in order to make that work, you would need some sort of probably revised MOU to figure out how is that going to function, because as a merit system employee supervising other merit system employees, they will have to respond to various policies in order to keep everything running. And, that will be our responsibility to continue to make sure that that occurs. And so it will be an interesting, it will be just a changed relationship, but it does create some interesting challenges to have a merit system employee supervised by people outside of the county government.
It does. And part of the concern that I have seen or that started paying attention to is that your meetings are not videoed. So someone actually has to be there to see them, and there's no archiving. And so I think, though that's certainly not part of this legislation, just as a FYI, I believe that you would be better off, just like body-worn cameras, they answer a lot of questions. I think that you would be better off, and the public would be better off, and certainly our retirees would be better off if you started doing that. I think the more opportunity someone has to give good suggestions, it might not be so good, but suggestions, the better off we all are.
And I think the board has actually tasked Mr. Crow as the acting executive director to look at different opportunities for how to do recordings, how to do enhanced minutes for all of the meetings, but they have to decide how that's going to function.
Ms. Crow, I know you were tickled to come over to do this, aren't you? Thanks.
Great. Well, given the number of boards and committees that we have who do have to have their meetings recorded or at the same time, I think we probably, Mr. Crow, I think that might be one of the easier tasks on your to-do list right now. Mr. Crow, did you have anything else to add?
Sorry, I was just going to add that it's been kind of a somewhat contentious issue on the board. We've been talking about it for over a year now. So it's not resolved yet, and that's why Mr. Crow's staff is actually doing additional work on it. So hopefully it'll be resolved shortly, and I agree with you, we should be recording things.
Okay. All right. Councilmember Evans, do you have questions regarding this amendment?
No, I was sitting here listening and thinking, having myself served on OPEB Trust Board, what I did want to bring up and kind of point out, I know we've mentioned the various people that serve on the board, some in a volunteer capacity. Prior to the board meetings, I was trying to think in my head, I feel like it's been so long ago, but it hasn't really been that long, how often we met, and I believe it was more than 4 times, probably not more than 6 a year, but in advance we would receive information that we could read up on prior to the trustee, the meeting, so that we can come prepared with any questions that we might ask the people that were over the investment fund. And I feel very secure and safe in knowing that we have our executive director sitting on one of the boards that, or both, right? And that you all have someone sitting on the boards as well to be able to bring up ideas or thoughts or caution or slow down the actuarial in the event that we're not going in the right direction. I think my question is there a formalized way, or is there a way that the council has been updated to know when there's going to be a change in any of the assumptions ahead of time? How is the council updated?
Well, honestly, your executive director is on the board, so your executive director, I'm sure, is telling you what's going on.
And so I am aware of that. I said a formalized in a way that is public or transparent, where the community is made aware of it. I know that I trust Mr. Howard. He is excellent in his role, but in making the changes that we're making, just letting the community know that we're being transparent. We want them to know what's happening. So there's not a formalized way that we do it other than.
Well, there is there is a quarterly report that the CAO has to send to the county council about the Board of Investment Trustees. I mean, there are,
Okay.
and I greatly appreciate the work of this committee, of Councilmember Stewart in particular, in OLO, and certainly Mr. Howard, in identifying some gaps in the way, especially I will shorthand it as the OPEB board, the Consolidated Retiree Health Benefit Trust Fund, how that board has functioned, because since it started not that long ago, 20, 25 years ago, it kind of ran with the same assumptions as the other board. And now this bill is putting some of the rules in place that were never there, because quite frankly, when it was created, it seemed like so far in the future that we would hit some sort of goal. We have. But, there should be that enhanced reporting and understanding and expectations of where that board goes and where those funds go from here. I mean, the important thing to note to everybody is, and always to remind, and thank you, Councilmember Evans, for bringing it up, we have almost $8 billion invested in these two trusts.
Yes.
For the retirement, for the liabilities that are managed by the Board of Investment Trustees, we are almost 96% funded on an actuarial basis. Over the last several years, we've gone above 100, come down as some benefit enhancements have happened, but we have a strong, long-time tradition in this county of meeting our liabilities and taking it very seriously and being, I think, quite prudent with them. Having been very involved in the state pension system, at one point the state was down in the low 60s. The OPEB trust for us, and I hopefully not breaking news, but you'll see in all of the budget documents, and everything is always included in the annual budget too,
Right.
that our share of liabilities for the OPEB trust fund is going to exceed its target of 75%. I think the state is funded at 4% right now for its OPEB liability. So we are a very serious, prudent organization about managing these liabilities, because this is the money for, especially on the Board of Investment Trustees, this is how people will live in their retirement, people who have sacrificed and served our county. So we take that very, very seriously, and we're pleased at the standing that we have for the years of commitment to fully funding and prudently managing this responsibility.
Okay. So I think that what I know about my colleagues that they want the best for our fund, the healthiest fund, so that your priority is our priority as well. I just wanted to bring it out to the community so that they would understand and know what who's on the board, what happens, and that we all have the ability to get that information and makes the decisions in real time. Okay.
Thank you, Councilmember Evans. Regarding this amendment, I'll say how I've been viewing it, and this discussion has been very helpful. I'm looking for this bill, as we just did with the first two amendments, to help clarify things on the role of what the board is. And I think, Mr. Trumpka, I think you stated it very clearly on what the board's roles are in this area is to oversee the direct strategy for the investment. And I appreciate the work that's been done on the MOU. I kind of see the MOU akin to like regulations, how things work. They're easier to change than a bill and legislation. I see in a bill and legislation is laying out our intent in policy. And if our intent is to have the boards oversee the direct strategy for the investments, I believe they should have a role in appointing the executive director. As this amendment is written, the CAO still has a great deal of input here. And I would imagine that we would build on the MOU that was written, but I think, as has been discussed, making sure we have those checks and balances and it's working is having a strong MOU, and there may be adjustments needed to that over time. But I'm still supportive of this amendment and looking at, again, this stating what our policy is to be consistent about what the role of the boards are, and then to work out those details on supervision and other things in the MOU. And saying that, again, we have a number of different boards in the county in which we do this. And so I'm going to be supportive of moving this amendment. Mr. Covey, you wanted to state something.
May I, if you wouldn't mind? I'm speaking mostly as the finance director here. On your concern about checks and balances, I've read this so many times, it's not even funny. Note that the board never actually even took up the legislation, never looked at it, never voted on it, voted only to go to the MOU. But as far as checks and balances are concerned, you're shifting a shared responsibility today. I think there's some confusion out there. It's unintentional confusion, I'm sure. But there's some confusion about how this all works. And the way it all works on the executive director's hire is the CAO convenes a panel a recruitment panel, and that recruitment panel has at least half as many board members as it does people from the CAO's office. And the board, this recruitment panel usually tries to become unanimous on their request to hire an individual, or possibly more than one individual, if more than one individual is actually up to the task. And then that recruitment panel, which again has at least 50% board members on it, speaks to the CAO, and then the CAO ultimately makes the decision. But there's a shared responsibility today, much as going through the actuarial assumptions is a shared assumption today as well. The boards talk to the CAO. The CAO ultimately makes the decision on these things, but the CAO is not appointed. He's not an appointed board that is really unaccountable to anybody. He's accountable to you. He's accountable to the county executive. He's accountable to the public as well. And so this bill and the amendments to it, actually, the way I'm looking at it as somebody who deals with controls and checks and balances on a daily basis, it removes some of them. It shifts that responsibility almost entirely to the board, and the board does not necessarily have to talk to the CAO or the executive branch on some of this stuff. And I think that shared responsibility is one of the great strengths of this hybrid system today. And I have to say, Mr. Tromka's report is a phenomenal report, but it's initially a survey of literature, and it's not really the holistic, comprehensive look at the system that I think you'd want to do before you actually undertake any changes to the system. But this bill actually, I think it actually reduces the security of the system. The retirees are counting on this $8 billion.
Thank you, Mr. Covey. So I'll say I appreciate that. I don't think we're confused. I think there may be a slight disagreement. Where you see shared responsibility, I see that all in the hands of the CAO right now. And what we're doing here is codifying in this bill that I see it as a shared responsibility. And if you read how this particular amendment looks, it still says the CAO is going to work with the Board of Investment Trustees and pick someone. I agree with you. It is a shared responsibility. What I have paused is that right now, a lot is in the hands of the CAO at the CAO's discretion for whom he or she will communicate with and how they will make decisions. What these amendments are doing and the direction we're going in is actually codifying more so a shared responsibility and staying true to what the Board of Investments, what they're supposed to be doing. So I appreciate your point of view and all the work that you've done and your experience. I think we may have a difference of opinion here, not confusion. Because right now, what I'd like to do is see how we codify a shared responsibility rather than leaving that up to the discretion of the CAO. whomever he may be or she may be. Councilmember Katz.
I'm sorry.
Do you want, go ahead, if you,
I'm sorry. It's in the MOUs today, and the MOUs are.
An MOU can change
Sure.
depending on who the county
Sure, it
executive
could.
is. And
It could.
what we're doing here is looking at those things that we feel are important to codify. And an MOU is still going to be important and needed. It is the same structure we use when we write bills and what goes into regulations. Because lots of times the practice and what is in a regulation or an MOU is not appropriate for a bill, because those are a lot harder to change, as we all see by being here today. And so I am not in disagreement with you that there are going to be a need to have a strong MOU, and I'm hopeful that members of the boards will come together and agree on that. Councilmember Katz.
thank you very much. First off, I think it's a concern when you're saying that half the board is doing something. I think that you need to have the board doing something. And the board is not part of the process for, right now, you said half are, but not for the selection. And if I'm wrong on that, please correct me.
No, I think what he was saying is, over the last 2 selections that I've been part of, I've asked the board to come up with a committee.
Yeah.
And the committee has been comprised of 3 board members and 1 representative from the county government to go through all the candidates. We've hired an outside selection firm. They came up with a list of candidates. That panel interviewed this candidates, selected their top, in both cases, their top set of candidates, and then passed them on to me for a final selection. And in both times, I've gone with their recommended candidate. This approach, I understand, but in essence, kind of flips it to, we would do all of that initial selection, vetting all the way through, and then present the finalists to the board to make the final determination.
Yeah, I believe that's not a bad process. I mean, candidly, but I am concerned about, I wrote this down, about how we're going to figure out the cost associated with items, actuarial, additional staff, things that we need to be advising, that the council doesn't change, but that we need to be advised of. So I think that this process, in many ways, that this legislation will fix what is now what could be a broken process, but we're going to have to figure out as we go through this what needs to be corrected, even with this new process. This has gotten to be, it is confusing in many ways, and sometimes the reason things are confusing is because we don't want people to know what's being done. We want people to know what's going on. So,
and there is, as I think you see in the fiscal impact statement, there is a cadence to some of the assumptions. Every 5 years, and this is common, I think, for public systems, every 5 years, there's a reassessment of all the different variables,
Yep.
the mortality tables, and sadly, because of the stress of positions, firefighters, police officers, for example, have a different set of injuries, of health conditions that impact their post-employment life and their length of life. So there are constantly actuaries who are looking at all of this stuff, and so every 5 years we're reassessing. Okay, what are the mortality tables? Because you got to figure out how long is someone going to live, to how much money we need to set aside to pay their pension obligation. What does the future hold from an inflation standpoint? How quickly are we going to turn over? What has been the experience of how long county employees are staying in their roles? All of that stuff. So all of those variables are reassessed every 5 years. As in my time, this time with the county, I've only been part of that 5-year study once, and it had a lot of people around the table to try to figure out, because we want to be as correct as possible, since there's billions of dollars riding on it. And then there's the rate of return. What do we expect the investments to produce on the rate of return. And the county for a very long time has had an expectation of 7.5%.
Mr. Mellon, can you just hold that thought? Because I feel like we're losing what's on the table right now. We have an amendment on the table.
Yep.
I
Okay, thank you.
appreciate that,
Yes,
and I think we
understand.
can come back to that before we take a position on the full bill, but I feel like we're just straying a little bit from what's on the table right now, which is this amendment regarding the appointment of the executive director, and I'd like to, so that we don't lose, the different threads here of what we're taking a position on. I just want to, if we can, and we may be in different places on this, I'm actually going to ask for a hand vote. All those in favor of the amendment as in the packet, please raise your hand. And that is unanimous, so we will accept that amendment. And Ms. Wellens, are there any other amendments that were in the packet before we get to just the discussion of the bill overall?
No, thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, and I will note, Mr. Tromka, you did have a sixth recommendation in the report to look at the composition of the body, and that is something that I think we will have conversations about in the future. But given where we are with this bill, and as we've talked about before, like what's appropriate to take up now in a future time, I think this committee will be taking that up at a future time with everyone in conversation. So I appreciate that as well. All right, so we have the bill now. We have the amendments we discussed today. I think we should open it up and have conversation on the overall bill and see if there are any questions. First, I will start with my colleagues. Do you have any questions regarding the bill overall and what it will do, or want clarification?
No, not on that. Can I just make a
Absolutely.
statement? Thank you. I just wanted to be very clear and say that and I think all of us have, heard from people on all sides of this issue who we sincerely and honestly respect their opinions. It always is a concern when, I always like to say, when the puzzle doesn't fit together, and right now the puzzle is not fitting together as nicely as I would like it to, but there are people who are truly interested and want to do the right thing for Montgomery County from both sides. And I sincerely appreciate that. We have heard about about the MOU, and to give the MOU a chance to actually work or not work, and I appreciate all of that. But I guess my concern becomes the fact that we're at this point now. And would we have been at this point if this legislation were not brought forward, or if the OLO report were not brought forward? And I don't know that we would have been. And this is a board that certainly affects every employee that has worked, or is working, or has worked for Montgomery County. And we want to make certain that they receive the benefits that they have worked so hard for. And that's my concern on this whole issue. I have mixed feelings, but at the end of the day, I think because of the Government Operations Committee going forward, we actually get two bites of this apple. Sometimes that's not as pleasant as it could be, but we will. We'll get a bite of the apple today, and we'll get a bite of the apple if people don't like what is happening today when it goes to the full council, and we'll hear from them for that. So I'm supportive of the way it's written.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Evans, any questions or comments?
No questions. I was going to say, just like my colleague, I received a ton of emails every day, all throughout the night, dinging at 12:30, 1 a.m., 2 a.m. But so that's not a complaint.
Well, you know that from the school.
No, I do. You know what? So I do. But this one, so no, I would receive a number of emails on the school board, but I think for this particular legislation, like this right here, it was coming at a rate and speed that just made me be more thoughtful and just really think that people really care. They're paying attention, which I love. So I just want to reiterate that my utmost priority is to make sure that our retirement fund is healthy and that is a number one priority for me. And so my colleagues, I've been brought up to speed in numerous ways, if not having meetings one-on-one with people, just reading and going through all of the emails, because not all of them were chain emails. Some put their heart and soul into the comments. And so I just want everybody to know that we're going to do our due diligence and make certain that the outcomes are as best as they can be for everyone. Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yeah, I cut you off before, Mr. Malino, but if you wanted to pick up that
right.
thread that you had before. So
I do want to assure everybody, the council members, all of our dedicated county employees who've demonstrated over, especially the last 2 weeks, the 24/7 commitment to the people of the county, and to our taxpayers, who obviously much of this money comes from the taxpayers, even though all of us as employees make a contribution towards our retirement as well. Making sure this system is rock solid to provide everybody who sacrifices in order to work for the county government is critical to me, to everyone sitting here, to County Executive Elrich, and all of you. No one should have any doubt in that, which is why we're so pleased that we have been so well regarded. I mean, we have been, through much of our history, performing in the top quartile, the top quintile in performance, and that rate of return of 7.5%. We have hit that target many times, of course, not in 1 year, because we all know the market swings up and down, but over a 10-year look back, 20-year look back, we have hit that target and moved forward. And that, one of the things we try to do in the MOU that we have now is to say, all right, the board members, when it was brought to my attention, the board members didn't feel like they really understood how the rate of return was being set and what went into that decision that's formalized that. Now you are formalizing that, I get it, in law as opposed to in the MOU. And I totally understand the differences between statute and an MOU, and greatly appreciate the chairman's comparison of a future MOU to regulations, and that everyone understands that if this bill passes and becomes law, that we will have to sit down and go through that whole process to come up with a new set of operating arrangements between the board and the county government, so that everyone can know that their pensions and their health care, retiree health care, will be protected to the best of our ability. But as with any change, we all know this. As with any change, new gaps arise that we will have to address, because everyone's intention is always everything works perfectly well. But as we experienced over the last 2 weeks, with the best of intentions, sometimes the systems that we have in place don't function when they come under stress. And so we look forward to working with everybody to make sure, again, we have the safest system that guarantees every employee what we promised them for their retirement.
Absolutely, and I believe we will, as a result of the conversations that we're having today. And I think what's so hard, Mr. Medellino, I've been knowing you for quite some time prior to being on the school board and working with you on the school board. When I think about today, what we're discussing, and even you were just here on Tuesday talking about the storm and how we handle that. I think the hard part is when we're having these discussions and asking questions, people could perceive it as a personal attack, right? And I don't view it that way. I want people to know that don't know me, that when I make decisions, I don't try to bring emotion into it. I deal with facts and with data. And so I believe that my colleagues and I are making decisions for whomever, as Councilmember Stewart said before, sits in these positions. So I just wanted to state that, because I do know that people are working really hard, and it could give the appearance based on questions that are being asked that the assumptions are that people are not doing their job. And I just know for me, that is not the case. So I just wanted to state that publicly. Sure.
Mr. Trumka, did you have something to add?
If it's the right time, just two comments.
Yeah.
Just wanted to highlight again for the committee, one area where the OLA report diverges slightly from the amendments is in terms of the selection of the actuary. The actuary does serve the entire retirement system, of which the CAO is responsible, as Ms. Wellens pointed out. And so it was our recommendation that stay with the CAO. The second point is that, given the comments from the CAO and Councilmember Evans, I feel very comfortable that regardless of where this comes out, whether certain responsibilities stay with the CAO or shift to the board, that the retirement system will be safe under the assumption that all parties are acting in good faith and fulfilling their fiduciary responsibilities. If you're acting as a fiduciary, it shouldn't really matter which seat you're in. You should probably be going to get the outcome that will serve the beneficiaries the most. And so, you know, the outcome of this could have minimal consequence as long as people are performing that way. The caveat I'll say, the section of the report that we'll discuss at another time is, should people not be acting as fiduciaries, and that has to do with the composition of the board. And I know, as the chair said, that's something that may be taken up in the future. That, to me, the relevance of that discussion is related to how well people serve their fiduciary role. And if people are serving their fiduciary role, the assignment of responsibilities might not have all that great consequence in protecting the fund.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Trumka, for raising those points. And I'll just say, like my colleagues have said, I think all of us here have a deep respect for the work that each of you are doing. And we know that we have these common goals, and we are going to continue working towards them. And so I just really appreciate all the work. Mr. Crow, you're in the hot seat, but we didn't get any questions, but thank you for being here. Mr. Carvey, our Department of Finance, every time they come here and you, under your direction, have been stellar, and we really appreciate your dedication to this. And Mr. Madaleno, thank you so much. And as we said, this isn't about individuals, it's about thinking about, how do we put in place in our laws so that what our policy intent is clearly documented there, so that in the future, when you're not sitting in your seats and we're not sitting in ours, that it is clear what the intent is and what the goals are and how we agree we're going to get there. And so I think that is what today is about, and I appreciate the dialogue. It has been very helpful in thinking through what next steps need to be, and I think moving forward. So with that, if there are no other questions or comments, I'll ask all those in favor of recommending for approval to the full council this bill as amended today, please raise your hand. And that is unanimous of the committee. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for your work today. And we are adjourned. That is it for our committee.